In this week's DCS SITREP, we talk about the CH-47 Chinook updates, the A-10 pilot body updates, and there's a livery competition going on right now for the F5E Remastered, and RAZBAM makes a surprise announcement.
Eagle 6 in the turn.
Roger.
Viper 1 bombs away. One's going to climb high above 20. You're up south.
Eagle 6 radar contact. Eagle 6 is visual.
Planet goes left.
Welcome back, I'm your host, recovering from a bout of illness, also known as Prickly Hedgehog, and once again, we're here to analyze news and information about the world's premier combat flight simulator for the home PC, DCS World. That game is brought to us by Eagle Dynamics and its third-party affiliates, and it's third-party affiliates which are dominating the headlines right now, unless you haven't been paying attention, with a surprise announcement from RAZBAM. Let's go backwards here a little bit for perhaps those of you who are new to the franchise. We're a year into, remember, an ongoing dispute between RAZBAM, who produce modules such as the Mirage 2000C, the Harrier, the MiG-19, and most recently the F-15 Strike Eagle, which is a premier module in the game right now. However, since April of 2024, these modules have sat effectively in developmental limbo, a situation established by RAZBAM, who laid down as one of their preconditions for resolution with Eagle Dynamics a developmental embargo on their existing modules. The only exception to this was the South Atlantic map, which, as you're aware, is developed by a non-aircraft team separate from the primary conflict, and that map is still receiving updates and upgrades as we speak. Now, what was interesting about the announcement was that RAZBAM also mentioned, and I'm talking about the 2024 announcement here, is that they mentioned third-party developers and teams supporting them, which kind of alluded to a broader net of issues behind the scenes potentially, and that other developers supported RAZBAM in their fight with ED once they knew the details, is basically what that announcement said. Now, very, very critically, third-party developers such as Heatblur, for example, who were mentioned specifically, didn't voice or haven't voiced their support publicly, probably very wisely. The crux of the conflict centered on, apparently, RAZBAM not being paid for work on the F-15E post-launch, although that wasn't overtly stated by RAZBAM at the time. They talked about the need to pay for employees' wages, etc., but they didn't specifically state it was a lack of payment on that specific module. And ED, naturally enough, made a statement of their own, pointing out that contractual obligations that RAZBAM had, alluding to intellectual property or IP specifically, was not met by RAZBAM. So there was the counterclaim. Now, this public announcement by both teams quickly morphed into a PR nightmare for both of them, I think it's fair to say, and here we are. Now, as I said at the time, once you go public with statements like that, and it was RAZBAM, remember, that went public first, announcing the conflict, sparking that inevitable response from ED and Nick Gray, it's hard to control the narrative. The blow-up in the community was intense, and of course, it forced a lot of people to pick sides and therefore speculate on the root cause as to who was in the right, what was going on, what's the rationale behind all of these statements, and of course, there was even the Pay RAZBAM campaign, which still surfaces now and again in the comments on numerous DCS videos or topics, certainly anything surrounding the nature of this particular conflict. So the rumor and accusation mill intensified too, with, naturally enough, a certain amount of information that was revealed about the conflict from some RAZBAM employees, probably frustrated. Some have left the company since, pertaining to financial remuneration or lack thereof. One such employee was Galanet, who produced the radar for the F-15. We've seen several statements now from Metal to Mesh, who produced a lot of the visual artwork for the module as well. He recently came out with a statement saying that regardless of the resolution of the conflict or not, he was going to redo the exterior work for the Mirage 2000C because of work that he was doing on the D model, which has been showcased recently. So there's a lot going on in all of this swirling conflict behind the scenes that we just don't have information to. Outside of the occasional discussion points, as mentioned, speculation and leaked bits and pieces from various sources, not necessarily always to do with the specific issue at hand, but some past issues and other points of discussion, both teams basically have maintained an uneasy silence. Now, Ron Zambrano's X feed is still full of retweets of DCS material on his modules, and most noticeably, he has also been reposting a lot of MicroProse material, which his team and he has been linked to, sparking more discussions about a possible RAZBAM MicroProse union for work with regards to Falcon 5. We haven't really heard much from MicroProse, as far as I'm aware, about the development processes involving Falcon 5, and I suspect it's some way off yet before we will have more tangible information. That's going to be a big project, and certainly it will, if it comes to fruition, be a potential competitor for Eagle Dynamics in the modern combat arena. Yesterday we had, after a year, an official statement from RAZBAM, which stated as follows, and I'll try and read this verbatim for you. To our loyal community, first and foremost, we're sorry. We tried relentlessly. You've been our champions from day one. Your enthusiasm, trust, and support have helped our small team grow into something we never imagined. You didn't just buy our modules, you believed in us, and for that we're deeply grateful. But there's something we need to say clearly. While you've continued to support our work, we haven't received a single dime of that support in well over a year. You deserve to know that. So if you purchased modules, in other words, through the eStore or what have you, RAZBAM hasn't received payment, is what I think they're trying to say there. I don't know if that includes work for the map module. So we've spent the past months locked in long, good faith discussions with Eagle Dynamics in the hope of resolving the situation professionally and being fairly compensated for the products you've embraced. We remain hopeful. So that's some good news. But we cannot continue to support the platform or maintain our modules without being paid. This is not sustainable. We are creators, but we are also people with families, obligations, and limits. We cannot be asked to work for free. It's just not fair, and it's wrong. This is also business, and in business, transparency matters. We continue to work towards a resolution. We still hope this is just a pause, a rough chapter, before we fly again with you in DCS and beyond. Until then, know this, we're still here and we're still fighting to protect what we built with you. Loyally, yours, RAZBAM Simulations. So there's a lot to unpack in that statement. There's three broad takeaways straight away. One is they obviously haven't yet reached a resolution with ED, 12 months into this impasse. Secondly, he's claiming they haven't received any money from ED, which, as described, was one of the original issues associated with the F-15E, allegedly. Thirdly, they're still working towards a resolution and hope to continue to be involved in DCS. But there's a lot of buts. There's certainly a lot of placatory language in the statement, effectively thanking those who have been supportive or loyal to RAZBAM during this period, which is to be expected. But he also added that we're still fighting to protect what we built with you. Again, those who are loyal to RAZBAM perhaps, or module owners, which I am one of, it does invoke, I think, a concept of the wedge in the community, even if unintentional, as I said, about picking sides, but it also hints at the potential then of the modules being lost somehow in the process of this conflict resolution. Now, again, I could be reading into things here without more concrete information. The language is still really interesting. Now, the forums on the matter are relatively alive, as you can imagine, and as far as I can tell at the time of the recording of this, the only response from one of the community managers for ED 9line is that the matter is a legal one and they're not going to make public statements. And that's been the position that ED and its team have held since the conflict arose. So it's interesting to see again this RAZBAM post. Now, I don't want to speculate too much as to why they made an announcement now. We could have reached, say, for example, a round of resolutions that didn't quite come about. It could just be that a year is a good marking point to say, hey, just so you know, this is where we're at, just to placate the community or satiate interest in this. It's been a while. Here's where we're at, kind of thing. But for now, overall, it seems the theme is effectively status quo until we get some post-litigation announcements that are made by both teams. It's a hurry up and wait and stay tuned kind of situation. Thinking about business, I wonder how long this is sustainable for RAZBAM. If you're having trouble, so to speak, paying the bills maybe, and trying to keep the lights on with no payment from Eagle Dynamics, as he claims, or certainly not receiving money for any of the modules that have been bought by community members, then again, there's a sustainability issue for that. And at the same time, you're probably paying quite a lot of money on litigation bills. That's, if you're a lawyer, those of you will know that's where money is made in litigation, not criminal law. There's a sustainability issue there, and I think there's also a sustainability issue in terms of branding and marketing. RAZBAM doesn't seem to have its irons in a whole lot of other fires outside of what we mentioned before with MicroPros, and as I've said previously too, I don't think I would be, as a business owner, MicroPros, wanting to do concrete deals with RAZBAM until the resolution with Eagle Dynamics is resolved, because it leaves a lot of unanswered questions. I'd want to see for myself that is resolved. There isn't, it seems to me, guarantees in other franchises as well. We saw India Fox Echo recently make a statement that they have shit-canned a couple of modules that they were working on with Microsoft Flight Simulator because they couldn't get them to work properly in a standard that they expected for their products. They didn't want to release a crappy product, in other words. So there aren't guarantees necessarily of good rewards in other franchises as well. So, for RAZBAM, as I said, who don't have a lot of irons in the fires elsewhere, Eagle Dynamics and the modules that they have in DCS World are a good chunk of their revenue expenditure, if you like, or investment in terms of time and money and employees working on those specific modules. That's where a good deal of their time is being spent. And not having revenue from that, again, leads me to wonder about the sustainability of this approach that they have to the resolution. And I think it also begs questions about the relevancy of their modules in the franchise the longer this goes on, because people are going to move on out of necessity, perhaps even, as we said before, with a loyalty issue, with the divide in the community as to those that are 100% rah-rah RAZBAM, those that are maybe a little indifferent, and those that maybe have taken a negative view on this and won't support RAZBAM products until there is a resolution. The longer that impasse continues, as I said, I feel that there's a relevancy issue. People will move on and they will focus on other modules that they can fly, especially with some big changes coming up in DCS World with regards to things like a dynamic campaign. So, lots to unpack. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Again, I'm not trying to deliberately blow up the community with needless speculation, but it was an interesting statement from RAZBAM. And then once again, at least more questions than definitely it appear to be answerable, certainly from Eagle Dynamics' point of view. As I said, their position is it's a legal matter. We're going to keep quiet until the litigation presumably is resolved. Well, let's turn to more regular news from the newsletters over the last few weeks. As I missed last week, that was about the CH-47F, and they have been adding new features and tuning the existing ones. The team say here the latest set of features has been rather complicated, they reminded us, and they thank us for their patience while they continued the development. The Digital Advanced Control System, or DAFS, is that how you say it? DAFSIS, native functions will include inertial radar altimeter, holds, velocity, and position hold. Other items in development include new flight planning functionality, an improved damage system, which will be good, and some more paint schemes, which will also be pleasing. The Extended Range Fuel System, or ERFS2, is also in development, so some good news there. An interesting launch of this aircraft. I don't think it received all the pizzazz that you get from some of the other modules, and I feel like perhaps the module was a little bit undersold on the initial release. It is a delightful helicopter, and again, it forms or sits in a bit of a niche within the DCS community in that transport, non-necessarily direct combat role. I mean, it still serves in combat, and landing in combat zones or hot zones still require a degree of pucker factor. So there's still much more to flesh out, I think, in what you can do with this aircraft that the basic missions include, and perhaps that's something that can be resolved here with some of the instant action missions we're going to talk about here in just a sec. Now, last week's newsletter also showcased some new work going on with the ATNC-2 Tank Killers pilot, which they have included some updates. The new Scorpion helmet features a lightweight shell and tinted visor with realistic wear and tear markings. Oxygen mask connectors and straps have been precisely modeled to move naturally with the pilot's head turns, creating a more authentic VR or track IR experience, which is good news. The flight suit is crafted from flame-retardant Nomex-like material, complete with realistic folds, wrinkles, and carefully placed pockets. Buckles, harness straps, and G-suit elements match real-world hardware, and they will continue refining textures of visor reflections and movement physics for the oxygen hose to ensure a truly lifelike representation when piloting the Hog. So they look forward to implementing final touches and launching this updated pilot model soon. Keep an eye out for a patch note, and they want to thank us for our support, naturally enough. Now, as mentioned in the intro, the F5E Remastered has a livery competition with up to $100 worth of US dollars, that is, worth of 80 miles. So the iconic F5E is known for its agility and timeless design. Here's your chance, they say, to give this legendary aircraft a fresh look. Show off your artistic talents by creating a livery for the F5E Remastered and get a chance to win incredible prizes. All liveries must be based on or derived from an historic paint scheme. So first place will get you, as I said, the $100 worth of 80 miles and one free Eagle Dynamics module. The livery will be added to the module. Second place will get you $50 and your livery will be added to the module. And last, you'll get, I shouldn't say last, third place, you'll get 25 80 miles and the livery will be added to the module. So kind of cool. Now, how do you participate? Similar to other competitions of this nature, you need to create your livery by designing a unique and exciting livery for the DCS F5E Remastered using the official template provided. You've got to submit your entry as a zip file containing your livery texture and a readme.txt file with your call sign, DCS username and email address. Then you need to submit it via the competition submission page by replying to the designated forum thread. You can also use an external link if the zip file is too large. It's got to be in .psd files only. You need some screenshots, at least 3, showing the front, side, and top views of the livery. Maximum of 3 liveries per participant. Voting and judging. Judging will be judged on creativity, quality, and in-sim applicability. Finalists will be showcased on the forums for community viewing. Special attention will be paid to period authentic liveries that reflect the real-world F5E operators, especially those based on or derived from genuine historical markings. Original work, rules and guidelines here. Original work, the submitted liveries must be your own creation. Plagiarized designs will be disqualified. Custom pilot and helmet liveries are not required, but the template for these is now available if you want to do some work there. No political themes. And cultural respect, so try to avoid, or definitely avoid, using offensive, inappropriate, or culturally insensitive imagery. We're all adults here, we should know what that means. In-sim usability, liveries should be practical and functional for in-sim use. Entries should complement the realistic nature of the DCS game, and liveries that are too outlandish or impractical may not be considered. Fluorescent pink, probably not a color that would be used in real life, for example. The deadline here is the 15th of June, so you've got about a month and a bit here, or a couple of months, and late submissions will not be considered. By submitting your livery, you grant Eagle Dynamics the right to use it, modify, and feature your design in DCS promotional materials and official media channels, which is actually not necessarily a bad thing if you're a person who enjoys doing that kind of thing and wants to promote yourself. That could be helpful. So, yeah, that's something that you're interested in. Go take a look at the rules and regulations and get to it, because there's, as I said, there's some good prizes there. Now, Instant Action Generator. This will be up everyone's alley here, so they're pleased to share the latest development on our Instant Action Generator, or IAG, which is a new tool that will replace the Instant Action Mission Generator that we have in the game right now. The IAG will give players a quick and easy way to jump into the action without the complexities of creating missions using the powerful but yet complex mission editor that we have currently. The IAG will offer customizable scenarios, air-to-air, ground attacks, bomber escort and attack, anti-ship, suppression of enemy air defenses or SEAD, and more with just a few clicks. Existing instant action missions will be moved to missions. Recent efforts have focused on sorting aircraft by historical eras, improving AI logic for different skill levels, and allowing players to fine-tune everything from loadouts to spawn points from an interactive map. The goal is to provide newcomers with intuitive and powerful tools to create simple missions and veteran players with the means to experiment with different matchups, weapons, and scenarios. Please note, that the IAG is designed to create fast and simple scenarios and not large, complex missions. So you're going to have to lower your expectations there if you're trying to build a much more complex world. There are some restrictions. Now, other enhancements include carrier operations, manual selection of allied and enemy units, and dynamic weather and time of day settings. As a result, the generator delivers a fast but flexible environment. We're testing a new module. Practicing before a multiplayer match or simply enjoying a casual dogfight is more accessible than ever. That's a good idea. They will continue refining the IAG to ensure it remains a valuable tool for pilots of all skill levels, so stay tuned for more updates on that. I like that. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section below as always. Well, we're almost at the end of the show, and I think before we do wrap up things, I've got a couple of things to talk about. One, I think it's worth mentioning. I think I'd be remiss in not mentioning the sad passing of Val Kilmer recently, who played Iceman, a counterpart and rival to Maverick in Top Gun, the original movie where he was a F-14 pilot along with Maverick, and there was a nice little dramatic tension between the two because Iceman considered early on in the movie Maverick dangerous, which, dangerous pilots generally don't do well, complacency and things like that. So there was a realistic kind of tension and criticism between the two rivals early on there. And he got to bookend the career too, because I think Top Gun was one of his early roles in Hollywood. And the last movie he played in was Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, kind of bookended his career with the Top Gun franchise. So yeah, a bit of a sad passing. And like I said, both Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer helping to, I guess, cement the F-14 as one of the legendary aircraft. Even today, though it's no longer flying in the US Navy, it still evokes a visceral reaction from audiences. It's still a fantastic, dynamic-looking aircraft, obsolete in today's world. And it's going to be interesting to see if the FA-XX, as it's currently known, gets a CAT designation in the tradition of some of the other historical aircraft in the US Navy's long history. So we'll have to wait and see for that. And Val Kilmer doing other movies as well. Doc Holliday in Tombstone, probably one of his most famous roles, and certainly high praise for that. Also enjoyed him in Heat, where that legendary shootout in downtown LA, I think it was. I think it would be hard to recreate that now with restrictions and noise and ordnance violations and all the other safety and health issues. It would be hard to recreate that, I think, in today's world. But an amazing shootout. That scene where he switches mags is legendary. So great actor, and like I said, sad to see him passing, and amazing to see him, like I said, help create the legendary status through film for the F-14 Tomcat, which is faithfully recreated with the heat blur module in DCS World and also in Microsoft Flight Simulator, where they teamed up with India Foxed Echo. Now, lastly here, a segment that I guess I'm calling the Tech Corner. I've got a couple of things going on. I'm very interested in this new chair that I've bought from SIMFAB, which I picked up from the Afterburn podcast, where Rain Waters was talking about using it. So he's just got himself a flight desk cockpit, if you like, put together. And I suddenly saw it and I was like, that's actually a pretty neat looking system, because there's so many others that are, to get something decent sub $1,000 these days is actually pretty tricky. And sometimes they don't always do what you want to. This seems like a fairly modular kind of design where you can add and subtract as necessary, which is... excuse my voice here, which is something that I needed for my situation, so we'll see how that goes. We'll do a review on that. No sponsorship here from SIMFAB either, so we will. It'll be a unbiased, if you like, opinion on that. I've been accused of being biased because of other things I get from time to time, like the Pimax crystal stuff, which we need to do some more reviews about. All right, now my voice is about to go here, so last piece of information really quick. I'm very interested in the Cyber Taurus joysticks that have come out, the force feedback bases. This seems to be a pretty hefty rival, if you like, an answer to Moses' system that also came out last year. Remember that WINWING produced something of a prototype that they showcased at the Flight Sim Expo, I think it was last year, and it was definitely a work in progress. And I'd asked if I could get hold of one early on when it was first sort of revealed, and they kind of said to me, well, we're not quite ready to release this yet, stand by. If there's anything else we can send you out, let us know. And we never really connected properly in terms of doing more work with WINWING's products. And it looks like they went right back to the drawing board here and completely changed what they were doing previously, or at least beefed it up, because this looks like a really hefty unit. Now, we're talking 4 different versions here. We've got a direct drive version, which I guess is the top of the line, coming in at around $700, 16 Newton meters of torque, and it's as I said, a direct drive version. The next one down is a reducer version, producing 60 Newton meters of torque, just under $700 again. Lastly, they have the R40 reducer version, 40 Newton meters of torque, retailing for just under $550. And lastly, the entry-level version, if you like, the R22, and as the name implies, 22 Newton meters of torque and a price tag of $420, give or take. So, and we're talking US dollars here. So really interesting unit. I think this would be highly beneficial for helicopter fans. It's something I'm definitely interested in. I might have to reach out again, see if I can get a trial version for review or something like that, but I'm not sure if that is on the table yet. We shall see. Either way, I really want one of these if the budget will allow. What version to get, I'm not really sure, because there are varying levels of torque. I don't know what level you need to satisfy your flight enjoyment. Certainly the base systems that I've seen in other variants, there's other ones out there in much lower volumes. One of the things you don't want for helicopter flying is a spring centering stick. So it presents some really interesting solutions and a pretty beefy looking system for force feedback. Now, the direct version obviously doesn't have the belts, if I remember rightly, from what gets used in racing simulation. Generally, that's something that a lot of racing simmers tend to like. Usually, they're pretty expensive units. But I think for flight simulation, either version's going to work. It looks like there might be a yoke version as well here. So very, very interesting product from WINWING. Not cheap, but I think realistically priced for what it does. And probably you're going to get a lot of use out of this, even with all the working parts. The proof will be, of course, in the pudding as usual. And like I said, maybe I'll reach out and see if I can get a trial unit or something, but fascinating stuff. All right, that'll do. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more exciting news on DCS World. We'll see you next time.